Welcome to the Cinema Australia podcast with Matthew Eels.
You see it all just like I do. Things are bad and getting worse. What's the solution? What's our best shot at really changing things, at finding something new?
Do you actually know what happened to them? Because if you don't, this whole thing is being shut down now.
Our engine simply holds space. When we're done, we stretch it out again.
I still say it's dangerous. Having it traveling through space the old-fashioned way.
3 years after the Ryko Island disaster.
People died, Liv, your co-workers. Liv!
You saw what it did on Ryko. Now I'm gonna finish this engine.
It's very different to last time.
Heading out with the boys. It has to be.
You're not building bombs, are you? Or working for terrorists?
We need to finish what we started.
Switching this on again without any idea what will happen, you're insane!
Get yourselves out now! Go!
Science is always 2 steps further forward than it should be. We never see the dangers of progress coming. Except...
That's the trailer for Space Time. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Cinema Australia podcast. My name is Matthew Eels. Over a decade in the making, the fully independent science fiction feature film Space Time is set for VOD release after a successful but limited cinema run around the country. In this episode, I'm joined by the film's director and co-writer Michael O'Halloran and co-writer Adam Harmer to discuss the making of the film in detail. This is a longer episode than usual, so I won't go into too much detail here, but here's the official synopsis for the film. When a team of scientists developing an engine for interstellar travel see their funding cut after a fatal disaster, they resort to criminal activity to finance and rebuild their device. Michael is an award-winning filmmaker whose passion for cinema began early. A QUT graduate, he's directed acclaimed short films and high-profile commercials. Adam is known for his writing and producing work on short films including The Dossier Case and Break the Rock. Space Time is available to rent or buy via VOD now and will be available on DVD from September 3. The DVD is available to pre-order via Umbrella Entertainment. Anyway, enjoy. Michael and Adam, thank you for joining the Cinema Australia podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, really good to be here. Great to be chatting to you.
Yeah, good to be here.
I must admit that I do feel like I've jumped a little bit between both space and time, considering I began covering this film way back in 2016 when the film's first teaser poster and original trailer were released. Obviously, we're going to dig into the complete timeline of Space Time from the beginning of production until now. But to begin with, I just want to congratulate you both on the actual film itself. The endeavour to make a film like this is an ambitious one that has paid off greatly, in my opinion. Space Time is an engaging, entertaining, grand, and seriously impressive sci-fi. So congratulations again.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. And yeah, exactly the kind of response we hope for. Just that fun, big adventure style filmmaking. So really nice to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, so nice to hear that.
It must be a relief for you two to have this film out there. But before we get stuck into the history of Space Time's production, the film recently enjoyed a limited but successful big screen run. How was that experience been for you?
It was really fantastic. We very much wanted to make a film for the big screen in making Space Time, and happily, had a number of screenings all around the country that were all really well attended and had a great audience response. And it was a wonderful feeling getting to see it engaged with as a movie, especially by sci-fi fans and people that really respond to this type of movie. I've said a couple of times of the experience, you spend so much time making a movie like this, pouring everything into it, but you don't really know if anyone's going to show up. And very happily, most of our screenings sold out completely, and we had to do encore screenings. So really nice to see that support for independent film, and the enjoyment of this kind of movie and the way it's meant to be seen on the big screen with popcorn in front of you.
Yes. Adam?
Yeah, it was just so much fun. We've basically spent a month traveling around with the film and bringing it to audiences the way that we've been, dreaming of for the last few years. And yeah, I mean, that it was just, apart from anything else, it's just such a relief to have people actually, first of all, show up for it, and second of all, enjoy it. That, talking to audiences after the fact, yeah, we've had a very positive response to it. So it really is, for us, a dream come true.
That's so great to hear. So who did you find was making up most of the audience? Was it people you knew, cast and crew, or people who have been involved in the film? Who was it mostly?
Definitely to start with, it's funny, I was reflecting on this just recently with our final screening on the weekend. It's the first couple of screenings in particular really were made up quite a bit by friends and family. And it has been, as we've moved further away from those first screenings, and so it's almost risky because you're getting away from the safety of the people that are going to say nice things no matter what, that we've found our audience. And yeah, by the end we really did have a really nice makeup of just people that had heard about us online. We'd been going really hard on the sort of marketing and social media side of things, so the makeup had been really good, and especially in having people that had no connection to the film, had just discovered us, coming back for multiple viewings. Saturday night's screening, we had someone who'd just been tracking the social media, and he'd come with a bunch of friends, and it was his second viewing, and another who had actually found us at a Sydney screening. He was on holiday and then had came up and saw us again on the Gold Coast and then Brisbane. So I feel like with each screening, we get further away from, as I said, the safety of the friends and family, and much more into our audience, especially that sci-fi adventure filmmaking audience. And it's by the end, I felt like we were certainly with our people in a way that was really, really fun. And you definitely felt the appreciation went beyond mum supporting you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Adam
I think. Yeah, especially for a film like ours, that we had such a large crew, and we had a cast and crew screening a while ago, which had like hundreds of people to it. And you sort of see that turn out and you're like, oh, that's right. We had a lot of people work on this. And then you see, people buying tickets, and you go to the first few and you're like, oh, did we just make a movie for us? But yeah, you sort of get out of Brisbane and you spread it around a bit. And yeah, as Michael said, yeah, there's people who have come like 2 and 3 times. And yeah, it's just random people who'll come up to you and say, oh, I just found this the other day. And I think that's maybe the most rewarding part, that you just want people to treat it like a real film. Yes. And it's so good that, yeah, some people are.
So have you met many people who have been following the film, since 2016, when you did share those original trailers and posters? Are there people out there who have been following the film for that long?
Yeah, absolutely. So many people that will come up after the screenings and introduce themselves and say, yeah, I've been following this the whole time. Don't know how I found out about it, but it just popped up in my feed, and I've just been, tracking its journey. It's really lovely that people have felt invested in that way. And I think even felt the same relief that we felt in getting the film complete and released. I think they were relieved for us and excited for us. So yeah, it has been a huge number that have come from that.
In fact, there was, I think, at the end of, actually, I don't know if it was the first, I think it was the first screening that we had publicly. The first person who sort of came up to me after the screening was like, I don't know if you remember me, but I was there when you launched the trailer years ago, and I was there when you guys went to that comic book convention, and here I am. And it's like, geez, like this almost is as big a deal for you as it is for us. Like that, yeah, there have at least been a few people that have just been following it for years. So yeah, a huge relief for them and us to actually have it out there now.
Oh, that's amazing. So good to hear. And I guess the final question that I wanted to ask you about these screenings is that I've noticed that you're also receiving comments from people who want you to bring the film to other states, like Perth, for example, where I don't think you've travelled here yet, have you?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. We did, and we actually did do a screening in Perth on Monday, just gone actually. So that was actually the final screening.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had you sort of at the beginning of the talking to distributors and sort of figuring out your release plan. I think there was an expected strong showing in Brisbane because, of course, that's where the film was made and where so many of the cast and crew reside. And so there was less, I wouldn't say confidence necessarily, but just like, oh, well, let's announce a few cities and see how we go with, Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. And yeah, happily, lots of messages like to the Instagram and Facebook, like we get all these direct messages and comments saying, why isn't it coming to Perth? Why isn't it coming to Adelaide? All these places. And so happily we're able to put on screenings and fill them as well. So it's been really nice to see that demand. And I mean, I don't know anyone in Perth, so I don't know if it's, if it's friends and family of others involved or just people that have heard of us and are on the journey. But yeah, it's been very cool to have people actively campaign to see the movie.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the beginning of this film, and actually let's go beyond the beginning of the film and talk about yourselves a little bit and how you two came to collaborate. How and when did you two first meet?
Adam tells this story so well. I'll give this to him.
Well, yeah, I mean, Michael and I, it goes all the way back to our first day of film school. We basically, a whole bunch of us from the cohort were sort of meeting in the foyer and very sheepish to sort of talk to each other, I guess. But one of the classmates had just bought a group of posters and was sort of laying them out, and it was the perfect catalyst to get everybody talking. And it was Ghostbusters and Taxi Driver and, of course, Back to the Future. So that, was a little bit of soothsaying for the events that were to come. But yeah, it was the perfect thing to sort of get Michael and I talking, and that just started everything. Basically, we've been working together ever since.
Do you remember that first conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that first conversation was much more about the filmmaking behind these particular films than, hey, let's make a time travel movie. We hadn't quite gotten to that point yet, but yeah, absolutely. I remember, a few of us, which we sort of formed a very close friendship there at film school. And that was just the sort of the start of it.
Something I'll say too is I think, because I came straight out of high school to studying film, and I think I approached it thinking I might be something of an outsider because so much of my taste was the films that Adam's just said, really like popular Hollywood filmmaking, and I was concerned that I was like, oh, am I coming in as a Spielberg fan going to be out of step with filmmakers? And I'm not saying I don't love. I mean, I love all movies. Really, my tastes are extremely eclectic. But I really was there. I want to make fun stuff, and it was just such a wonderful feeling to meet Adam and to be like, oh, we both love these films and don't stick our nose up at fun and silly and goofiness in movies. We actively love that and worship at the altar of Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. So it really was a relief for me as well, just feeling like, oh, good, there's a place for the kind of movies I like and want to make here. And I think that was a big part of Adam and I bonding early.
Yes, it sounds like there was no filmmaking snobbery there between you both.
No, I don't think so.
We try to avoid it, but you sometimes can't help it. Yeah.
Yes. So what was the film school?
Oh, this is at QUT.
Yeah.
We were, did the film and TV degree there.
Awesome. Your IMDb profiles tell us that you've both made 3 films, The Dossier Case, Break the Rock, and Space Time now. But were you making films on a more micro level prior to those 3?
Yeah, that's right. We were working on all sorts of short films all through university. So obviously you have what's set as the assignment work, but we were making stuff on the weekends, every every uni break. We were making different short films and experimental films and all sorts of things, just really figuring out our working relationship. And on top of that, writing all the time, just coming up with ideas, throwing things at the wall. And like Adam and I, if we see each other, one of us is throwing an idea at the other. Like we caught up a couple of days ago to talk about one thing, and on lunch it was 2 or 3 ideas back and forth of like, oh, what about this or what about that? So we've always been making things together in one form or another, and just you make your mistakes. Hopefully you make most of them early. We made all new spectacular mistakes on Space Time, but yeah, a lot of those early films that are let's hope no one ever sees them, but we definitely learnt a lot.
Yeah, but I will also say on that note, the idea of the micro budget, productions, it like Space Time is the like extension of those things. That it always is me trying to think about how are we going to pull this story off and trying to boil it down to its most simple sort of elements, and Michael then expanding that to make it the biggest, most impressive, grandest scope you can imagine. So yeah, that it sort of is. Yeah, Space Time was destined to happen.
Well, so going back to those smaller films that you're making during uni and together prior to those other 3 that I mentioned, was there anything in there similar to Space Time that might have inspired Space Time or led to it?
Not necessarily in terms of story or even genre, but I think in terms of style, yes. I do think I was personally always wanting to sort of hit a level of cinematicness, maybe is the word, between cinematography and music and sound design and all these things. I was definitely personally always really drawn to polished movies that looked like movies, which especially in the era that we were making our student films, we were in that the transition period really between from film to tape and to digital. And so we were those early digital cameras, and at that point, the technology, it didn't quite look like movies. And I think that a big part of my desire to like really get a handle on all the bells and whistles that make a film look like a movie was me trying to figure out like, why don't our films look like the stuff I see at the cinema? What's missing? And I think that did cause me to follow a path to really zero in on, okay, these are ways that you can feel cinematic, on any medium, which is not to say that, that's necessary to all filmmaking, but certainly to what I was excited by and what we were trying to make. So I think that's probably the main connective thread more than actually making movies that are like Space Time in terms of story.
Yes. Adam, did you want to add anything to that?
No, yeah, just that, every film sort of has a different style and feel, and it's just trying to, match the right film with the right feel to it. And I do think, as Michael said, the number of productions that we've done over the years that have a certain feel to them, I think that's what's carried through rather than any plot or anything like that.
Yeah, and you obviously work very well together, considering the longevity of your partnership and your collaboration. How would you say your working relationship developed and grew while making those short films?
Well, for me, Adam has better ideas than anyone. And I have said many times he's a better writer than I am, and just is one of those guys that just comes up with unbelievable original ideas, whether it's a concept for a film or whether it's even just a set piece or like, oh, I've got this moment I can see and it could be this and it could be that. And so I think a big part of our relationship over the years has been us sort of taking big ideas that he has for films, me having my ideas for set pieces or for like, I want this kind of scene or this kind of feeling or whatever it is, and just finding the best way to put those together. Adam's been such a great person to write with, because sometimes I'll just come in with a really loose fragment, like totally uncooked, but I know I want this kind of scene and this is going to happen and a bubble's going to open and she's going to jump through. And he's the guy that wants to start figuring out, okay, how can we make this fit into a story? How can we make, this ridiculous thing that Michael wants to do visually. How can we make it? How can we make it fit? So there's been I've been the benefactor of his support in trying to find stories to let me do what I want to do as a director. But also there's the level of just you need a friend when making a film. Films are really hard, and again, I've been lucky to have so many great friends. All my best friends worked on Space Time in one form or another. And yeah, whether it is Jai, our other producer, the producer along with Adam and I, whether it's Adrian, our score composer, whether it's Justin, visual effects. Adam's my best mate, and sometimes it's just having someone that keeps you on the tracks. That's been a massive part, and Space Time's the ultimate test of that, and the fact that we're here is a huge testament to that.
How beautiful. Adam?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think basically, filmmaking is the perfect manifestation of relationships, because it really is a collaboration. Like if you are one person with a camera, you can do that, but it's probably not going to be a film that a lot of people are going to want to see. And it really is about having the strongest leader you can and the best team around them. And yeah, I think that over the years, working on all of those other projects that you mentioned, it really is was like years of refining what we've now got. And it's a huge learning process. Like a lot of times it's not easy, because we get along so well. We literally are best friends, and we've got so many similar ideas. And you think, in the writing room, everyone is on the same page and everyone thinks about the same thing. And you get to set and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't how I saw it going. But that's a part of the process. There's no two human beings that have the exact same idea about something. And it really is like there's a huge amount of trust there, that you have to just basically place so much trust in the other person. Which is why picking the right people to do this is so important. And I think for both Michael and I, we're just so thankful we found each other and found the right team around us to, make the things the way that we want to make them.
Yes, and my regular listeners are going to roll their eyes when I say this, because I do emphasize this point a lot, that collaboration is key when it comes to filmmaking. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
You cannot do it by yourself. It's the ultimate collaborative art form.
So when was Space Time first spoken about between you two?
I think it was really when it was clear that it was going to be Space Time. I think it was around like late 2014. We did have ideas that we'd been talking about even earlier in terms of the kind of time travel movie we would make. Adam also is a writer who writes his own things without me, and had been noodling around with a few different time travel ideas. And we had been chatting like, oh, what are you working on there? And oh, I've always thought it'd be cool to do something like this with time travel. And so a series of conversations over many years really led to the final choice of this, we should make this idea the film. I'll let Adam tell the story, because again, he tells it very well. Adam, do you want to talk about what started before Space Time?
Yeah, that it basically, a series of just conversations in general. Again, it literally did start with that Back to the Future poster, and then for years we're always just talking about the physics of time travel and what you can achieve with it and what you could do and what you shouldn't do, and sort of not talking about a film about the ethics of time travel, but I think just talking about the possibilities and the ethics of it led us along a certain path without us even realizing it. And then in 2014, we were already at the point where we were thinking, well, we've got to write a feature. We've done a number of short films now, and we've got a really good team around us. It's probably time to do a feature. And we were talking about maybe doing like a spy thriller. And we were really trying to crack that story, and we were having a bit of difficulty with it as it goes. And in the meantime, I'm sort of doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm doing a little bit of writing, and I would just happen to be binging a lot of Breaking Bad. And one of the thoughts that I've always had with Breaking Bad is, the idea of someone who is scientifically minded, putting that, instead of, cooking crystal meth, if he was putting his skills to something productive, like saving the world or building a time machine or whatever. And so I was sort of tinkering around with this idea as a TV show. And I was, again, in my usual way, trying to keep it very small and grounded and character based and whatever. But once I mentioned this to Michael while we were trying to do our spy thriller thing, yeah, his eyes lit up and he was like, that's the idea. That's what we got to do. We're going to start writing that today. And Michael just had a whole bunch of his own ideas. Like, I want to have this character in it and I want them to sort of do this. But a lot of that first meeting was him essentially, I was like, we are not ready to do this. And it was him pitching me the idea. After I've pitched him the concept for the film, he's now pitching me, oh, we can pull this off. And it's like, this is what the first act's going to be. This is what the second act's going to be. This is what the third act's going to be. And it really was me not sort of nodding for the first 45 minutes, like, this guy's out of his mind. And then, you know, years and years of, I think we can actually do this. I think we can pull it off.
Talk to us a bit about the writing process on Space Time then, because I'm always curious to know the process of a script writing collaboration. I've spoken to a lot of filmmakers over the years, and there are various processes. What was yours?
Well, again, it always starts as conversation and it always starts as ideas. And I think, as Adam said, there was a framework that came together really quickly for us, really in one or two meetings, like figuring out that structure. I think we're both big structure guys. We both really like to feel that sort of the confident hand of a writer of like, oh, I know when I'm in the second act, I know where we are. And sort of feeling that escalation. So that all came very easily. And then the writing, again, we got there very quickly. We had we wrote at 1,000 miles an hour and we were just kicking pages back and forth. Adam cracked the final act, like where they're jumping in and out of all the different times and spaces. That was him going off and really trying to figure that out, because I think that was the most difficult to keep a handle on, and especially the way that I volunteer. Oh, this could happen, and then this could happen. I think there was a bit of like, just let me go and map out what happens here and what happens where, and then you can start throwing all the the ideas that are going to make this even more difficult.
Yeah, that was kind of my deal breaker, that it's like, if we're going to do this, before we do anything else, I just need to make sure that this is going to work, that the climax is going to work. And so basically the third act was written before anything else, just because, not just production wise, it was going to be very complicated, but yeah, narratively, it was like, well, where are they going? What are they doing? Their mission has to make sense, and people have to be able to at least a little bit follow what's going on.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, once we had that, we was sort of like, we're confident about that, and we're able to then go back and put the other pieces in.
Amazing. Are you writing together in a room, or are you flicking it through via email?
It's a bit of both. Yeah. No, you go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of it is the conversations and taking a few notes in the conversations. And then often we will go to the next phase, which is we sort of write our own versions of them and then try to bring those together. And then when we're putting the sort of the final touch and the polishing, we're in the same room, making sure that we're sort of all in agreement on everything.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to shape this question in a more positive way than a negative way, but are there many arguments happening? How do you know that? Is it just a feeling when you know that something's right?
Yeah, it does. You know, every now and then there are disagreements, but like I said before, I think that is part of the process, and that's part of filmmaking. And I will say that I do think there is something about the writing of it that is maybe a little, I guess actors would have a similar process. I'm not an actor myself, but it would be, once you're in it that personally and you're like, this is how I want to express myself, you can't help but feel a little bit like, oh, something is stopping me from getting the thing I want across. But again, it's about trusting yourself and trusting the process and trusting, you know, the people that you're collaborating with. And that's why it is so important to pick the right people.
Yeah.
I think there's also an element where you are, you do try to figure out quite early on which, like, who the master you're serving is. And I don't mean like me as director is the master we're serving. You do kind of figure out like what the story, like this is the main idea. And because Adam and I were in agreement on the movie should be a movie about XYZ, Because we agreed on that, every conversation was kind of, it didn't have to be difficult. It wasn't an argument, never was a fight, because it was like, well, we're trying to do this, aren't we? So let's focus on what's going to allow us to best create the thing, we know at our core we're trying to make. And I think that just made, there were discussions, lots of them, but we were always in agreement of the master we were serving.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Adam, I guess you did touch on this briefly before, but how close was that original concept or some of those original concepts to this final product that we're seeing now? Well, was it a bigger film originally? Did you set yourself some ambition boundaries and maybe budget boundaries straight off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would come as any surprise. Like, every project goes through so many changes, and truthfully, it's a very different entity now than it was back then. But it really is, about the core, hopefully the core concept being strong enough that it sort of carries through. And again, ultimately, which is a part of picking the right people to collaborate with, you're both on the same page about, even in a genre like science fiction, even in about something that is essentially about technology, you want a human story, and you are telling a human story with human relationships and the consequences of that. Like, you don't want just someone running around and, it's jumping in and out of time if people are like, well, I don't care where they're going or what they're doing. So it's basically about, as long as you can hold on to that, and everyone's manipulating it one way or another, and you bring in more people, and everyone's contributed to it, the actors, and even Jai as producer, and with the score and the visual effects, like, everything, it evolves as it goes along. And again, it's just trusting that the end is that was a big part for me, that as we're filming it, at a certain point, I remember thinking, well, this is now quite different to what I originally was thinking about. And I was having a bit of a tough time with that, but I was like, just trust it. You trust the people, you like what's going on. Everyone's here just doing their best. But there was a period where I was like, I don't know if I can really picture 100% what is going to come out of this. And thankfully, Michael is literally the hardest working person on the planet. And as soon as we finished filming, he started editing. Within a month, we had a rough cut, and a whole bunch of us came in, from the crew came in to sit down and watch this rough cut, and it had, no color grading, it had John Williams' score all through it and whatever. It's really bare bones of what the film was, but it was enough for us to all say, okay, now I get it. This is what the film is going to be. And again, it was different to how I had seen it in the beginning, but I'm very happy with the result,
Yeah. Michael, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, only to say that I also had a very different idea of what it would be before we were on set. So much of filmmaking, I don't think this changes depending on your budget. Like, I feel like this will be a truth that is always the case. I do think you discover what film you're making as you make it. And I felt like, oh, okay, it's this kind of movie was very much my feeling as well. It all kind of, you grab a bunch of ingredients, you throw them in the pot, you start stirring, and it's like, oh, it's soup. Oh, and it's good soup. Yum. Like, there is a real crapshoot. No matter how much you plan, no matter how much you see it in your head being a certain way, something will change on the day. Something will go wrong. You will have to pivot, and you've just introduced a new element to the film that wasn't on the page.
You've both mentioned Jai Hogg there, who I know is just as passionate about this film as you two are. When did Jai come on board?
So Jai joined us, we were about halfway through pre-production. So Adam and I typically will produce, write together, and then usually it has been me directing, but also Adam directs as well. But we were very aware that the scale of what we were trying to do was getting beyond us, and that we would need a heavy hitter in our court. That's my attempt at a sport metaphor, which is just for Jai. And so we really were. I had been to see his film Tailgate. I was invited to the cast and crew screening by someone who worked on the film. And I was just so impressed with the film itself, but also with what he had achieved. And I thought, oh, this is a guy who's really going for big screen movie making as well. And so we had a few conversations, and there's a lovely photo I have from our it was out. We went out for dinner with all the heads of departments. This is before Jai had joined the production, and we had all the crew go for dinner. And there's a photo of me holding up my phone, showing Adam, because I had just said to him, like, I think we should talk to this guy Jai Hogg. Like, you've got to see his film. I think you'd really get along. He's very much on the same page as us in terms of ambition. And at that moment, I'm getting a message from Jai saying, "Hey, so what's this space-time thing? You want to catch up? I wouldn't mind. I'd love to talk to you about being involved." And yeah, the photo is me showing out. I'm like, holy shit, I was just talking about this guy. And he's just messaged me. Yeah, it really was one of those magic, meant to be things. Yeah, absolutely.
Adam, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just that I hadn't met Jai before all this, but Michael had talked about it. He went to see his film and said it was great, and met Jai and seemed like a lovely guy. And I think even without Space-Time, Michael had already flagged, like, I think we need to sort of get together. I think he seems like one of us, sort of thing. And then we got to the point of pre-production where we were starting to think, I think this one might be too big for just the two of us. We're both going to be very distracted with a whole bunch of stuff. I do think we need someone to come in and, shoulder some of that weight. And Jai reached out, and it was just a perfect fit.
Amazing. It all worked out fantastic. So let's talk about the aspects of the film that we experience on screen before we get into, a bit of the background behind the scenes of the film. But the film does explore the effects of climate change, albeit briefly at the beginning. Is climate change something that you're passionate about, or was that just something to base your story around? Where did that aspect of the film come from?
I'll say, I think that's something we're both very passionate about. I think the truth is the story came first. And so when deciding what are the stakes, why are they building this machine, we definitely did want to have a world that was on a path that, that something extraordinary would have to happen to turn them around. But I think Adam and I both feel like, we look at the headlines, we look at the state of the world, and we say, God, are we on that path? Are we going to need something like this to get us back on track? So, I think that component, while it is a detail in the film, we did want the state of the world to also have a realistic, like, what if we were, a few more steps down the road on the timeline we're currently on. What if things got a lot worse? What if there was no action? I think that's right. Adam, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in the early days of us talking about the film, we were talking about other science fiction films and just action films in general that had sort of influenced us. And sometimes they come up with these very big premises where you sort of have to imagine something very different happening to the Earth. And we were sort of like, well, there's a lot happening right now that we can sort of use that. If you just go down the road a little bit, we are going to be possibly facing some very big things in the future. And I don't necessarily think all media has to be like very socially conscious, but I do think that that's something for Michael and I to sort of, I think it does make a difference when you even lightly bring something that you believe in into the film. I think it makes a big difference.
Yes, yeah. So the next thing that I guess I was wondering was the research that went into the scientific side of this film, because obviously you two aren't, scientists, you're not time travelers. What kind of research went into that side of it? And especially when it comes to the language used in the film, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm already a little bit interested in that stuff. I'm certainly not a scientist myself. I'm, academically challenged, as they say. But I do find a lot of that stuff very interesting. And at the time when we were writing it, there was a lot going on in the world. That was sort of CERN and the Large Hadron Collider and the Higgs boson particle and all of that. And it really seemed like the perfect bridge between fiction and reality of whenever there's time travel in a film, it's either in a car or a phone booth or a briefcase, or it's something that like really is visually exciting and different and unusual. But I think we sort of also wanted to have something that when the audience saw it was like, well, I can actually see this happening, like this giant engine. This is usually how these things are sort of built, you know, in real life, even if time travel isn't available today. When it is available, isn't this going to be sort of something closer to what it would resemble? So I certainly did a lot of research as far as that goes, and we were like, reading articles, and I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. And I can't find them now. I don't know if they've been taken off, but there was an Australian engineer physicist. I think her name was Amelia, and she would she was working at CERN at the time, and her videos would like take you around and like show you how everything that they were working on. And that was just so fascinating. And especially in those early days, the character of Liv, I was sort of like using, like I said, I think her name is Amelia, as sort of the example for which to sort of start designing this character on. But I also, I also do think it's also important for us to, first of all, put a lot of fiction into the film that I didn't want it to. I don't think Michael and I want it to be this photo real, like, oh, time travel actually exists and it's just around the corner and, you know, whatever. So I think, truthfully, there was a lot of the, as we say, the Empire Strikes Back, especially whenever there's a technical term, it's the particle dampener, or it's just like two words put together that you kind of know what each of them does, but you're not 100% sure. And we just also did want to keep it light and fun and, you know, accessible to people that didn't have a scientific degree, because we don't either.
Yeah, I think it always for us was it needs to make sense, but it doesn't have to be completely real, and that's I think that's the balance we really tried to strike.
That's really great, and that says to me that here's two filmmakers who care about their audience as well, and you know, care about the experience that they have watching this film.
I think definitely.
Hopefully, it's enough to follow. It's enough that you're not hopefully questioning whether this could happen in the context of this world that you're seeing, but also you can just sit back and watch it, hopefully.
You're listening to the Cinema Australia podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or at cinemaaustralia.com.au.
You mentioned Ashlee's casting there, and as well as Hugh Parker, who are the film's co-leads, playing the characters Liv and Holt respectively. Can you tell us a bit about their casting? Because I know that you've worked with Ashlee previously, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, and we had worked with Hugh as well.
Oh, great.
So we wrote the roles for them. There was no universe where we would make space-time if Ash had said no, but also if Hugh had said no. Like, we just had so directly built the characters with them in mind and couldn't really picture anybody else. I'd worked with Ash on a short film many years before. I was the first AD and she was the lead on this short, and I just remember seeing her in this role, and she had this great humor. She could really handle the dramatic scenes. There was a real it factor to her, and I was just like, oh man, I just want to put her in an adventure film. I just want to see her do something, like bring that talent, I suppose, in all these different areas into a genre film. And so Adam and I did a concept short that was for a different feature idea, but it basically became Space-Time. We retooled that idea. And Ash had been in that, and that was where we first cast Hugh as well. And they were the two co-leads of that concept short as well. And so, by the time we were making Space-Time, we had a very good handle on their chemistry. We had a very good handle on them as actors. And I think we also had started to build up this is what we want to see these guys do. This is what we want them to, the kind of scenes we'd like to give them and see them play with. I think that Ash is one of those actors that does a lot of work that's not immediately obvious. I think she has a real challenge in Space-Time, not just between being in every scene, but having to manage some pretty varied tones. Space time really does give you the full gamut between romance and comedy, and then danger and excitement, and all these different tones. And it's really on the character of Liv and Ash's performance to navigate us through these pretty extreme different beats, and you don't even feel it. You don't even notice it. She makes it look so effortless. So without her, I feel like it doesn't work.
Yeah. Adam, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that I think the leads of all the acting in the film is essentially what got us through the initial phase of post-production, that we knew it was going to take a long time to finish this film, and we knew there were going to be some good days and some dark days. And truthfully, just the fact that we got these performances from Ash and Hugh and Pacharo, who plays Harris, that we hadn't worked with him before, but we had huge expectations from both Hugh and Ash, and the fact that they met our expectations and exceeded them, and then so did Patch. Like, it was a phenomenal mix. And the fact that we managed to capture their performances through the whole thing, and the Ash is carrying this film on her back. She's in every single scene, and she's just incredible. Like, she is so magnetic, and she has so much charm and charisma. And the fact that the relationship between these three leads works so well, I think, is really what kept us going through at the beginning of the post-production phase, where it's like, okay, we're digging in. It's going to be a long time. Are we doing the right thing? Yes, we are. Like, yeah, they really were fantastic.
Just before we go on, have you seen much of their other work? Are there other films that both of them have been in? Are you fans of their general work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah. Whenever any of them are in they do a lot of theater. They've been in films every single opportunity. I think Michael and I just jump at the chance. Yeah.
Yeah, that was how I first met Hugh, actually. Was I saw him on stage in Julius Caesar, and was just like, oh, wow, who is this guy? And like basically sent a fan letter, like got his email through his agent and was like, hi, I saw your play. That was amazing. Can Adam and I write something for you? And that was pretty much how that started.
And Hugh's performance in this film is very theatre, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
He's got such a commanding presence, and yeah, it's phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, well, we really wanted Holt as a character to be a bit of a grandstander, and
Yes.
I think there was a lot of pleasure for Adam and I in writing these speeches and seeing like, okay, this guy is someone that knows how to convince a room and also relishes the chance to speak in this way, and has these grand ideas and knows how to express them. So yes, he was a perfect fit for that character.
Definitely. The film's third act, it's essentially a two-hander between Liv and Holt for that entire third act, it's quite physical on the two actors as well. Can you talk us through some of those more physical scenes between Liv and Holt?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Like it really does come down to the two of them, really, both physically and mentally, for control of the engine. And so we had a week of rehearsals before shooting began, and we had worked through all the dialogue scenes, and knowing that once we got to set, like, we'd just be shooting at 1,000 miles an hour, and there really wouldn't be time for big discussions and interrogating every line and every scene. And so because we knew we had these aspirations in terms of the action and the set pieces and the physicality. And so, yeah, happily, we made a lot of the big decisions in terms of blocking, and in terms of intent and intention and everything with the script, before we got on set. And that then really freed us up to then play and experiment and find the most interesting choreography for the physical. We did not have an action choreographer on set. It was me working with the actors, figuring it all out. And truthfully, like, it was mostly very safe, and all, like, the movie makes it seem a lot more dramatic than it actually was. Two people running around a warehouse. There's a lot of visual effects and a lot of editing to make it all seem much more dangerous than it was. But they were really up for the challenge. I think they both relished the idea of getting their hands dirty, and boy, in that warehouse did their hands get dirty. It was lots of crawling on the floor and all the different bits and pieces. I think they were excited by it. It was exhausting and hot and unbearably uncomfortable, but also that was the experience of the characters and their actors that I think, saw that as an opportunity to really get into the headspace of Liv and Holt.
Yeah, I think you've also got to remember that even running for 4 meters on film, you've got to shoot that 13 times, especially when it's very technical and we've got a steady cam on and we've got the focus puller trying to catch it, that it's like even the tiniest bit of action is going to take them running all day. And especially in that warehouse, that was just boiling for all of us that weren't in these jumpsuits. So yeah, it was a huge challenge. And I still am so thankful that, they were absolutely up to it.
Can I actually add something to that too? Oh, sorry. I was just going to add, because Adam just mentioned Steadicam. Milan Holick was our Steadicam operator, who's just a gun and also the guy you want with you when you're in a tight spot. He just brings a cheeriness and energy to the set. But he also, there was so much Steadicam in this shoot. If we're talking about the physicality of those scenes, he's the other that's getting physical and running and jumping and all the rest of it. It became, truthfully, it was a 3-hander between Milan operating steady with the 2 actors.
Yes, I guess it's a bit of an understatement, isn't it, to say that it's a 2-hander between the 2 actors, because obviously there's more involved than that.
Yeah.
And Adam, you mentioned earlier that the 3rd act of this film was written first. How did it feel to see it all coming to life?
Yeah, it was really overwhelming. That I remember there were a couple of times where we had to we were at the beginning of a very big day, call a meeting, get everyone together and say, this part of the set you can't touch because we're filming that later and there's continuity. We've got 3 Livs on set. You got this one that, has got the wig on, and this one you only sort of see her hands, and you're sort of just trying to keep all the crew members aware of what's going on, because, everyone in their own department has to be at least a little bit aware of sort of what's happening, and the stuff that we're filming doesn't really make sense to us in our world. That you're like, just letting you know, today is going to be very confusing, and we're going to have different states of makeup depending on whether someone's just come from the future or the past or whatever. But yeah, all of that was so much work to keep track of, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. It's impossible to talk about space-time without mentioning Adrian Diary's stunning score performed by the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Did you provide Adrian with a brief and references and things like that?
So yeah, Adrian and I have been working together almost as long as Adam and I. He scored almost all my short films, and we have a really good relationship, a very good shorthand when talking about music and musical references. I do really start with music in mind. And it's not necessarily like, oh, this is going to be the temp track. And truthfully, a lot of the music I know I was talking about with Adam in the writing of just talking about tone and sort of what I saw didn't end up in the temp score for when the rough cut came together. It was more of a this is the feeling I am trying to hold on to in thinking about how we put together a scene. So when I sat down with Adrian, I think he knew what to expect, in that I would use music liberally. I definitely the charge that Michael O'Halloran uses a lot of music is absolutely an accurate one. But I feel like he was very aware that would be the case, and that we would be going for something quite grand, something quite old-fashioned. But I think the expectation was, just because of our budget, that it would be at least a 50-50 split between electronic and live, because we have worked with orchestras together. Our first short film that Adrian scored, we put together a volunteer orchestra that was made up of students, pros, all sorts of things, and they just came together and for a couple of days of recording and put together this score for this early short film. And then we've, over the years, worked with different orchestras of different scales, but this was going to be like, okay, this is a full feature film's worth of music. We won't be able to afford a full orchestra for the whole thing. Let's try and be quite selective about where we'll use it, and then what will be electronic. And then happily, as you say, we managed to get the Melbourne Symphony on board, and they really responded to what we were trying to do and really liked the idea of a more old-fashioned use of music and a more melodic approach to film music, and ended up really coming to the party in such a way that we were able to have the entire score be performed live. And yeah, it was just mind-blowing, but it did mean there was a very major shift for Adrian, who'd been working on ideas that would be a mixture of live and electronic. Suddenly it was like, it's all live, go. And he had 7 weeks to write the score before we were before our first recording call with the orchestra. So pretty incredible effort, both to write that much music, to write it on that timeline, and write it to the standard that he did.
Yeah, because there is so much music in this film, isn't there? It's almost every scene from beginning to end includes the music.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, it's funny if you stop and look, there are a couple of scenes, there are a few that don't, and quite deliberately are like where music falls away. But yeah, there is ultimately. It's not quite wall to wall, but yeah, there's if we've made 90 minutes of movie, he's had to make like I think 84 minutes of music. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, Adam, anything you want to add to that, or what was it like to watch this film with that score?
Yeah, I mean it actually might be one of my favorite memories of the entire production was the week that we went down to record the score with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. It was, for people like Michael and I, it was just like we were kids in a candy store, and indeed Adrian, but he was there in more of a work capacity. But yeah, just going down and watching this orchestra perform this score, and for me, that I had heard really only little snippets of the MIDI version of what we were recording, and then to hear it for the first time with the entire orchestra full force, record their takes of it. It really was, that was like maybe my favorite week of the entire production. It was just incredible.
I will say too, there was a component, I think, all through this film that the type of movie we were making, even before we had discussed, oh, will this have an orchestral score? That was just kind of assumed. I know that was a big thing for that first conversation that Jai and I had when he reached out. He was just like, oh, so what are you thinking for your orchestra? And I was, I don't know, like hoping we can do it. We're not really sure. Like because he's a very big John Williams fan as well, just like us, and or film score fan, I should say, but like loves that orchestral Jerry Goldsmithy kind of feel. And so, yes, we I think everybody who was sort of joining the production was also like, oh, cool. And we're doing that, right? We're going to be finding a way to make that happen. So yeah, that was a major win for all of us to really to get to be like, oh, wow, with this very difficult, very important piece has come to life and is now clicking into the film.
Oh yeah, it's so good. All right, so let's start talking about the behind the scenes aspect of this film. Especially considering that principal photography did start in 2015. As you've both said, you were writing the film prior to that date as well. There's a teaser trailer and poster launched in 2016, and then the film drops off the radar from a promotional point of view. What was happening during that time? Those 10 years.
Yes, quite a bit was happening, as you can imagine. So we I think where to start. The 10 years was not our hope or expectation. That was absolutely a surprise. We definitely knew that it was going to take a long time. And I think that the things that we were putting out into the world from a marketing point of view, we had been putting out these vlogs all through the pre-production, all through the production, and through the first couple of years of post. And they had served us extremely well in that they did not only create interest in the movie itself, but also make it a lot easier for us to, if we needed something, if we're calling someone and saying, hello, we're from Spacetime, they could find and see evidence of the production. And so a lot of the early marketing and online presence was to help us get it made. Like, yes. I think half the reason we got the MSO excited about the film was they had looked up those videos and like, oh wow, these guys are trying to do something from the 80s, 90s that sounds like our cup of tea. Yes. So we really needed them. And then I think once we realized, okay, we're really in for the long haul, cooling off the publicity and the public presence, it just made sense. It was like we don't have much to say other than we're just still working and working hard. There have been films, independent films, that have had ambitious post productions that kind of disappear into post, and then you never hear of them again. We've worked on them. You know, that they're like, oh, it's give us a year or two, we'll see at the premiere, and then it just goes away. And we really were determined that not be us. We did not stop working for a single day. There was not a few years off while we stuffed around and tried to finish the edit. Like, it was full time, go, go, go. It was just the volume of the work. And that goes for visual effects, but also for sound and music. Like, all the post-production components, we were just, shooting for the moon in terms of the scale and polish that we wanted. But it was this very small team of us just day in, day out, chipping away. And so, yeah, that 10 years also had all these moments along the way of, little extra pickups here and there, and ADR and all these other little parts of the filmmaking process that were happening. So it wasn't like there was a big shoot and then we just spent 10 years editing. There was quite a bit still being added and grown and shuffled around. But when you speak about it as 10 years, it sounds like, God, that must have been hell. And definitely it was difficult. But also, it was kind of the best. Like, we were working on this movie that we loved. We were working with people that we loved. And we were constantly making the film better. We were constantly filling in the detail. We were constantly adding the pieces that got us closer and closer to the vision that we all were trying to bring to the screen. So it was just a slow, steady march forward. I've described it before as being setting out to swim across the ocean, knowing that there's land on the other side. You just have to keep swimming, having faith that eventually that horizon will show you. You'll see the massive land, and you'll get closer and closer, and before you know it, your hand will be on the sand. And really, even in our darkest days, there was never a single conversation around, do we pack this up? Do we give up? It just never happened. There was never that chat of Adam, Jai, and I sitting down and saying, have we done our dash? It just never was even considered. It was just forward, 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 go, 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 believe, believe, believe. And happily, we're here today with a finished movie that I at least feel it doesn't necessarily have to be loved by everyone, but it certainly is what we set out to achieve, and that to me is the achievement.
Yes, well, Michael, you've answered, the next two of my questions there, because I really didn't want to put I wasn't intentionally trying to put a negative spin on this when I was going to ask you, was there ever a moment when you felt like the film was taking too long and that you wanted to drop out? So yeah, that's so great to hear that there was that positivity along the way.
Yeah, I look, Adam, I think should comment on that as well, because he may have not different feelings, but certainly has a perspective that's different, because I was so in the thick of it as director and as editor, and working with Justin on the visual effects, and so closely with Adrian and Hayden, our sound designer, on all the sound and music. But yeah, it really, I think that I had known all my life that there would be a first feature film. It would be impossibly difficult, and that would be the thing that would have to be done. Like, you look at all of our heroes, so many of the great filmmakers that made their first indie film, and whether it's a 10-year journey or something else, there's always a major hurdle to overcome, because that's just the world of independent filmmaking. And I think those filmmakers that are willing to jump off a bridge to get their movie made are the ones that that people want to see more from, and they like that love of filmmaking and that love of big screen storytelling is something people respond to. And I think we knew we were in good company, even though it was like, God, we're going to be that movie that took 10 years. It's like, well, everyone, like, there's always a difficult first film. This is our challenge, is in lieu of money, our resource is time.
Yes. Adam?
Yeah, no, I obviously, working on this film for a long time, it there were bad days and there were good days. And I think for me, it always kept coming back to the fact that there are other people, you know, who were the ones doing the actual work. It was Michael trying to lead the charge. It was Justin doing the visual effects, Adrian doing the music. For me, it was really just stress. It was just that I really just want to figure out a way to get this done. Like Michael said, there was never a question of, do we, you know, drop tools and just abandon it? That was never even a thought, because I think we all really believed in what we were doing. So it was just the moving forward and the challenge, you know, just the internal challenge of doing that every day as well. I think the other thing that I'll say, like we were really, I think I mentioned this earlier, that we were really just pushed ahead by the quality of what we had captured. And I think that we had sort of spent all of our miracles on the fact that we had conceived of and written and shot this film in a very short window of time, like basically a year. And then we had this long post-production process, which even well-funded films, you know, take so many years to get off the ground. And yeah, I think that we just like sort of had our miracles early on, and then we just had to like nose to the grindstone, work the rest of it out. And yeah, like I said, I think it was just the quality of everything that we captured pushing us forward, and we knew that the end result was going to be worth whatever we were putting into it.
Were the special effects a big part of this period? Because the special effects shots in Space Time are absolutely flawless. They're incredible. Did they take up a big chunk of this time?
Yeah, absolutely. They were a huge part of the time suck. It was just the volume. So we really just had so many effect shots. We went in because like we did a number of visual effects tests in pre-production. We were very prepared. We'd planned out very, very carefully how certain effects were going to work. But once we started shooting, there were all sorts of challenges, none of them surprising. They're all the classics for any movie, but especially in indie. And it just, the shot count was increasing and increasing as a result of how we were having to film, the compromises we were making. Very rarely were we saying, oh, we'll just fix it in post. That really wasn't what got us into trouble. It was realizing, oh, okay, we have to shoot this direction instead of that direction because that's where the sun is. Because Spacetime didn't have any film lights. Like we shot almost entirely with natural and augmented practical lights. So you know, you see scenes in the film and it's just what lights were there in the scene. Okay, cool. We'll put a bit of diffusion on this one and we'll put a China ball on that. And that was basically how it was lit. But the genius of Daniel Maddock, our cinematographer, is that, yeah, he would take me around the location when we found the warehouse, for example, and he'd say, okay, so these panels here, and there's a sky panel there, like built into the warehouse. There's a skylight there. If you can shoot at this time of day when the sun is here, you're going to get this result. If we shoot here at this time of day, it's going to look like that. So try and block your scenes to match what's best for where the sun is and how the light's going to be working by itself. And so we did that, but it also meant that quite often we would be like, great, we're in this perfect spot for light, all looks good. Oh, but the green screen is now in the background of every shot. Okay. And then I would talk to Justin and we'd say, okay, well, what do you think? Like, do we want flat lighting or do we want the green screen in the background? And he was the first to put his hand up and say, no, don't compromise anything. Like, we'll find a way. We all were united in this approach that nothing, we never wanted to be like, oh, it's a visual effects shot, so the camera stopped moving, suddenly everything's changed in terms of the cinematic language and the approach. It was always trying to make sure it felt seamless. And I do think beyond Justin's incredible talent as a visual effects artist, it's also that philosophy that really helps the effects be, as you say, flawless. Like, I do think they're integrated so well because he wouldn't let me change the way I wanted to shoot the film to accommodate visual effects. He was like, no, we this is how we're going to do it. We'll find a way. And he was right. We did. It just took a long time because when it all came down to it, there was just a lot to work through, and, you know, supporting him and working as much as we could to make it as easy as possible. But it just was an enormous list. You just had to start chipping away and work your way through it.
Yes, yeah. I've got just a couple more questions here for you, but I guess the other thing that I'm wondering about is distribution. Were you approaching distributors during that post-production time, and at what stage did Umbrella come on board to distribute?
So not really, no. We weren't approaching happily. We were being approached, which was quite nice. And I think that was
Awesome.
off the back of us having that social media presence. And again, it was approached, can we see a screener? When can we
Mm.
see it? And that started some relationships and conversations. And a lot of it was like, oh, we're just working our way through it. Let us get a bit further along, and we'd love to show you. And then and then at a certain point, we were looking at like, oh, there are other ways to bring in other financing to help us get the film over the line faster. And then we did open up to showing the uncompleted film to distributors, and had a lot of interest and a lot of excitement there, but not in the way that would bring in the kind of money that we would need to finish, like to finish quickly. That was our biggest challenge, was not knowing what our completion date would be, because it was just keep on working until it's done. That was the real like, ooh, we're not sure. And yeah, happily, Umbrella took a look at the film a couple of different times and in a couple of different forms, and ultimately, this final form the film's in, because over the life from script to screen, the movie went through all sorts of different changes in terms of the structure and all these different things. And yeah, the final cut of the movie, the one that you've seen and that's been released, we sent to them, and they really liked it and were excited about its potential. And so yeah, that led to Umbrella pulling us under their umbrella. Oh God, I don't know what I was thinking with that joke. Somebody stop me, please.
Adam, did anything you want to add to that?
I think we're just so happy to be where we are now. It's been such a long journey, and yeah, really happy that Umbrella has come on board. I think they're such a great distributor to be partnered with, and yeah, look forward to all the various releases we've got coming up.
So I guess one of my two final questions here is, how has the experience left you both? Has it left you hungry to make more films, or do you want to take a break for a while, or what's next?
Adam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, as far as my stuff goes, I feel like I have been taking a break. Like, my favorite stuff to do is writing and coming up with characters and building worlds and relationships and all of that stuff. And I've been steadily doing that over the years, but my contribution of that to space time was a very long time ago. Yeah, I'm very hungry to start working, and I sort of am. I'm throwing myself into a whole bunch of different scripts and ideas and things, and I think, apart from anything else, Spacetime has been the ultimate, film school for both Michael and I. Having gone through film school and made short films, there's always more to learn. And whatever we have done with Spacetime that I think we are both very happy with, and where we've ended up, there are definitely things along the way that we have learned. And I'm very much looking forward to bringing that to the next one.
Yeah, I feel similarly, like just very excited to put into practice everything we learnt in making this film. I do need a short break to recover from this one, but I think truthfully I can't help myself. Cinema is my addiction. Filmmaking is the drug I love, and I'm hungry to be back on set and make another feature film. Happily have a few that's on their way to possibly being realized, and that's quite exciting. And yeah, Adam is someone I'll want to write and produce with forever. And I'm also, just as a film fan and an Adam fan, very excited to see him direct next as well. He's a terrific director. So I'm ready to make more. I'm ready to see Adam make more. I'm ready to make more with Adam, and anyone else that wants to make stuff.
Sounds good to me.
With this final question here, I'm very aware of how busy you've both been, so I understand if it's not possible to answer this question, but it's a question that I ask all of my podcast guests at the very end of the episode, and that's whether you've seen any Australian films recently that you've really enjoyed or that have stood out for you.
I am going to say I haven't seen anything. I've seen 2 movies this year. I have been woefully behind on films. However, I did see Grand Mockery, which is a film by Sam Dixon and Adam Briggs. It could not be further away from space-time, and man, did it knock my socks off. But I'm very excited. I will say right now, in Queensland especially, the run of unbelievable feature films like that look like they came straight out of Hollywood that have all just come out in the space of the last like month or two, it's kind of mind-blowing. I think we're in the middle of a real shift in terms of Queensland filmmaking, and honestly following Cinema Australia and just like your coverage of just film after film after film. It's like, God, like what is happening here? What have we got in the water at the moment? There's a real energy. So I'm personally extremely excited to get stuck into watching some of these films. The first on my list is Double or Nothing. I'm really keen to stream that and check that out. That looks like so much fun. And we the night that they had their first public screening was the same night as our first for Space Time. And it was like a cinematic high five between two cinemas, having these two Queensland films opening on the same night and having to argue over which of our cast would be on our Q&As, you know?
Yes, because you share some cast.
So cool. So yeah, so that's, I'm just looking forward to putting my feet up and watching some unbelievable Australian films now that this one is done and off my plate.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was also at the at that Grand Mockery screening, and likewise, yeah, it was just phenomenal. Like that is such a great film. It's so cool. Yeah, very weird. Like as Michael said, it couldn't be further from space-time, but it's really fantastic. And like Michael, there's so much that I have been missing out on because we've been so busy. But both, I'll say first of all, the Aegean. I think you covered that on a previous episode, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. And the other one that I've been keeping my eye on is obviously Bring Her Back. I loved Talk to Me and cannot wait to see that. Everything I've been hearing is like this one goes even further. So
it does.
Soon as I get a day off, both of those are going to be high on my list.
Yeah. That's so great to hear. You can't see my face right now, but I have a huge smile on my face that you mentioned those particular films because they're all amazing. And anyone who's listening to this, seek those films out. Adam and Michael, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you both. And this is a much longer episode than I usually do. But of course, we had to cover all of the bases to do with this film. So I genuinely thank you both so much for sharing your stories and being
Thanks so much for having us.
Australia podcast. You're very welcome.
Yeah, no, really appreciate being on the podcast and also just everything that you do for Australian cinema. Like we've been following, again, as long as you've been sharing our posters and teasers back in the day, like we've been following and listening and reading everything you're doing. So you're such a champion for Australian cinema.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Find all the latest Australian film news at cinemaaustralia.com.au. You can follow Cinema Australia on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok.